Combat Arts Institute of Australia.
Hi everyone, this is Ron from Combat Arts Institute of Australia. Welcome to my first video post. What I wanted to start with, first of all, is a little post that I shared on my blog, a while ago now. I think it's over 3 years, which caused a little bit of a stir in the local martial arts community, which was great. You know, there's nothing wrong with dropping a few bombs here and there and seeing if you get a reaction, although that certainly wasn't the intention at the time. And it had to do with sharing my own experience with trying to find places to train growing up. So, you know, I had a fascination with martial arts since I was pretty young. You know, I used to watch all the old action movies with, you know, with Bruce Lee and Van Damme and all that kind of stuff. Used to really love them. And always had a fascination with it. And I tried a bunch of styles growing up and then stopped and started and was never really consistent until I met Sensei Noah Greenstone about 10 years ago and really kind of got into it seriously. So I just wanted to share some of the things that I went through trying to find a school that was right for me. Now, I think that we're at a really interesting point in martial arts history at the moment for a couple of reasons. One is the phenomenal growth of mixed martial arts and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu over the last decade or so, since, you know, UFC really took off, even though it's been around, you know, for what I think like 25 years or something like that now. But really the last 10 years it's become a household name. Everybody knows what MMA is. Everybody knows what the UFC is. And Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has also really taken off as a very popular sport all around the world, which is really great. You know, it's providing a lot of opportunities for martial artists to really get more exposure for the great work they're doing and get more people involved in martial arts, which is a fantastic thing. The other thing is other terms that have been coming up a lot in the martial arts world, less on the competition side, more on the self-defense side. So terms like reality-based self-defense. See, I was doing the little thing, lasers. Reality-based self-defense, combatives, and Krav Maga, which have gained a lot of popularity and at the same time a lot of notoriety over the last 20 years for being not a real martial art and having bogus practitioners and you know, qualifying instructors too quickly and all that kind of stuff, which in my personal opinion is warranted some of the time with certain organizations. So it puts our industry in a tough position. On one hand, we're getting a lot more publicity than we have before, which creates a lot more opportunities. On the other hand, that publicity is not always positive, and we have to be careful with how we present our art and have a deep understanding, I think, of ourselves and what it is that we do individually as martial artists to make sure that we cater to the right market and we give students what it is that they are after. So, taking all that into consideration, and adding one other point which I think is important is that a lot of the trends that have seemed to be coming up, and I'm speaking now maybe less as a martial artist and more as somebody who's worked in education for 20 years or so, is the trend is moving more and more towards instant gratification. We see this on Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff, where knowledge is now instantaneously accessible through the internet and through you know, smartphones and all that kind of stuff. You can access videos and articles and any piece of knowledge that you want instantaneously, and so the emphasis on retaining knowledge has actually decreased. And part of that is that sometimes, and from what I hear from other industry experts, is that students are less willing to spend, you know, 5 years, 10 years to get a black belt or a lifetime honing their craft. They want to get results now. The result of that is that, I guess, different schools and different organizations who cater to different markets will have a different idea of what a black belt standard, again, lasers, might be. So, without further ado, here are 8 tips or 8 thoughts on finding the right martial arts school for you. The first question you need to ask yourself is, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Are you looking for self-defense classes? Are you looking for fitness? Are you looking for something really social? Are you looking at competition? If you don't understand what your goals are, you won't be able to find the right school for you. The problem is that a lot of schools advertise everything, you know. Go, come here and get fit and learn how to defend yourself and learn how to be a champion and meet friends all at the same time. Maybe at some places, but most of the time it's going to be hard to do all of those within the confines of one style or one school. So make sure you understand what it is that you are after and ask around to find the right kind of instructor and school for you based on that. If you're looking to learn how to defend yourself, then, you know, doing body combat or cardio boxing is probably not the right thing for you. If you're looking for, you know, like a light, fun social experience, then maybe going to train in a school that is solely focusing on high-level competition won't be right for you either. So that's number one. Number two is, what kind of club culture are you looking for? Every school has a different type of culture, and one of the things that you should consider is that if you're serious about your training and you train regularly, the people that you train with will become a very big part of your social life and your social network. You're going to spend a lot of time with them. So you're going to have to select a place where you like the people and you like the culture. Some schools might be more ego-driven than others, some are not. Some are very competitive, some are not. Some emphasize technique and control and tradition, some emphasize aggression and fitness. And that's not to say that any of those is bad, it's just that you have to find the right one for you. So ask yourself, what is the kind of culture that you want? What are the kind of people that you want to associate yourself with? The third one is, don't be impressed by a laundry list of credentials or a fancy gym. Many instructors will list themselves as proficient in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 systems. I remember a particular instructor who listed himself as proficient in 15 different styles from all around the world. Now, if it takes you, let's say on average, 5 years to get a black belt, some more, some less, to get a black belt in 15 styles will then take you, what, that's 75 years? So unrealistic, right? So just because people have a lot of certificates on the walls doesn't necessarily mean that they are experts. A lot of instructors and a lot of schools use the buzzwords that are currently, flying about on the internet to try and get students in. So don't necessarily be impressed by the number of qualifications on their resume. Go in and actually see a class and see what they do. Feeling is believing. Yeah, better to see than to just read something on the internet and go from there. Okay, so go and check out a class. Now, the same thing I think applies for the gym itself. So some of the best places, best gyms, and the best coaches that I've trained with were at people's backyards, or in a small alleyway in the Philippines, or in a small smelly dojo somewhere where you walk in and the first thing you smell is Bengay and sweat. You know that people have been hitting things. And to me, that's a lot better than going into a gym that's super shiny and super clean, where it looks like nobody actually does anything. And it's not to say the place has to be filthy, but just because a place has new equipment doesn't necessarily mean that the quality of teaching is better. So that's something for you to consider. Number 4 is, find a school with a teaching style that suits you, or an instructor with a teaching style that suits you. Each teacher in each school will have their own way of running classes, as well as their own way of sharing knowledge and explaining concepts. So go watch some classes and see if you reckon that the way that instructor teaches is relevant to you. Even within here at Combat Arts, we have, let's say for Krav Maga, we have 4 instructors. 3 of us who are actively teaching and 1 who teaches on the odd occasion, even though he's very, very highly qualified. And we all teach on different days, and we have different students who only come to that instructor's particular class all the time because they resonate with the way that that person teaches or the way they explain things. So go and see a class and see if you can understand what the instructor is saying. If you can learn just by sitting and watching, then that's a good sign you're going to get a lot more by actually participating. But if you go and see and you go, I have no idea what this person's talking about, then maybe it's not the right school for you. Number 5 is don't be impressed if you see a lot of black belts around. Every school has a different black belt standard. And sometimes if you go to a class, and out of a class of, let's say, 30 people, there's 20 black belts and a few beginners, it could be, not necessarily, just saying it could be a sign that the standard for a black belt is very low. There's a school that I know who gives a black belt in Krav Maga once you've done your 100th class and have passed a very simple test, right? I dare say that the standard of black belts at that school might not be as high as somebody who spent 10 years studying Krav Maga and grading with real, high-level masters. I don't know, but logically that would make sense to me. So different schools have a different black belt standard, and you should inquire as to what that standard is and what the requirements are before you go and train. Or before you commit to a long-term contract at least. Number 6 is try and consider what is the best class size for you. So some schools operate on the principle that bigger is better. And you go into a class and you might have 50, 60 people with just 1 instructor. And some prefer classes where, you cap it at 20. And again, I'm not saying one is bad and one is good. There are pros and cons to both. So if you are going to a school where you have really huge classes, you're probably not going to have a lot of one-on-one time with the instructor, but you're going to get to train with a lot of different people, which is going to improve your own self-development. That being said, you're not going to get one-on-one time with the instructor. If you go to a small class, you're going to train with the same people over and over again, but the instructor is going to be able to be there every time and give you a lot of individual attention. So think about what is it that you prefer and what do you reckon will work best for you. Number 7, and I think this is a really important one, is watch the students as much as you watch the instructor. So some teachers may not be extraordinary practitioners themselves, but they can be phenomenal teachers. So sometimes if the teacher doesn't demonstrate much, but all the students look really, really sharp, that could be a sign of really, really good martial arts tuition. That being said, if the teacher looks amazing, but all of the students look like shit, then, and I'm talking about experienced students, not people who just walked off the mats and walked into the mat for the first time. So if you got a lot of high-ranking students who just don't look good, even though the instructor looks good, that's probably a sign that tuition is not at a very high level. A really good example for that is, let's say, Greg Jackson, arguably the greatest MMA coach in history. And he's a great martial artist, no doubt about that. But, he's made his name as a coach, as a phenomenal coach. People who train with him are champions, almost as often as not. So that's not to say that the teacher should not have any skill, but you should watch the students as much as you watch the instructor. Lastly is that loyalty sometimes comes at a price. Certain schools are very strict about training at other places. And if your plan is to do jiu-jitsu in one spot and maybe boxing in another one and self-defense in another one, but one of your instructor tells you, well, if you train here, you can't train anywhere else. Up to you. Sometimes that's okay. For me, all the instructors that I had who were really good have always encouraged me to go and seek out other places to train, at least once I had a base in their system. So that's something for you to consider as well. So there you go. It's some 8 tips or 8 thoughts on what to look for when you go looking for a new martial arts school, especially if you're just starting out. If you have any questions or any comments, don't hesitate to give me a call or email me. And please visit my blog to read more about this. You can find all of this at caia.com.au.